Welcome to Tales by Twilight, with your host, Twisting Ways. Follow me to distant lands with knights, dragons, wicked witches, and fairies. Hello, and welcome to Tales by Twilight. I am your host and storyteller, Twisting Ways. Today I will be telling the story of Rumpelstiltskin by the Brothers Grimm. It is the tale of a young maiden who must be forced to spin straw into pure gold, and how the little man comes to help her. See if you can derive any lore from this, for gift-giving to fairies can reap much reward. Rumpelstiltskin. Once there was a miller who was poor, and who had a beautiful daughter. Now it happened that he had to go and speak to the king, and in order to make himself appear important, he said to him, "I have a daughter who can spin straw into gold." The king said to the miller, "That is an art which pleases me well. If your daughter is as clever as you say, bring her tomorrow to my palace, and I will try what she can do." And when the girl was brought to him, he took her into a room which was quite full of straw, gave her a spinning wheel and a reel, and said, "Now set to work, and if by tomorrow morning early you have not spun this straw into gold during the night, you must die." Thereupon he himself locked up the room and left her in it alone. So there sat the poor miller's daughter, and for her life could not tell what to do. She had no idea how straw could be spun into gold, and she grew more and more miserable, until at last she began to weep. But all at once the door opened, and in came a little man, who said, "Good evening, Mistress Miller. Why are you crying so?" "Alas," answered the girl, "I have to spin straw into gold, and I do not know how to do it." "What will you give me," said the mannikin, "if I do it for you?" "My necklace," said the girl. The little man took the necklace, seated himself in front of the wheel, and whir, 3 turns, and the reel was full. Then he put on another, and whir, 3 times round, and the second was full too. And so it went on until the morning, when all the straw was spun, and all the reels were full of gold. By daybreak the king was already there, and when he saw the gold he was astonished and delighted, but his heart became only more greedy. He had the miller's daughter taken into another room full of straw, which was much larger, and commanded her to spin that also in one night if she valued her life. The girl knew not how to help herself, and was crying, when the door opened again, and the little man appeared, and said, "What will you give me if I spin this straw into gold for you?" "The ring on my finger," answered the girl. The little man took the ring, again began to turn the wheel, and by morning had spun all the straw into glittering gold. The king rejoiced beyond measure at that night, but saw he had not gold enough, and he had the miller's daughter taken into a still larger room full of straw, and said, "You must spin this too in the course of this night, but if you succeed you shall be my wife." "Even if she be a miller's daughter," thought he, "I could not find a richer wife in the whole world." When the girl was alone, the mannikin came again for the 3rd time, and said, "What will you give me if I spin the straw for you this time also?" "I have nothing left that I could give," answered the girl. "Then promise me, if you should become queen, your first child." "Who knows whether that will ever happen?" said the miller's daughter. And not knowing how else to help herself in this strait, she promised the mannikin what he wanted, and for that he spun more straw into gold. And when the king came in the morning, he found all that he had wished. He took her in marriage, and the pretty miller's daughter became a queen. A year after, she had a beautiful child, and she never gave a thought to the mannikin. But suddenly he came into her room and said, "Now give me what you promised." The queen was horror-struck, and offered the mannikin all the riches of the kingdom if he would leave her the child. But the mannikin said, "No, something that is living is dearer to me than all the treasures in the world." Then the queen began to weep and cry, so that the mannikin pitied her. "I will give you 3 days' time," said he. "If by that time you find out my name, then you shall keep your child." So the queen thought the whole night of all the names she had ever heard, and she sent a messenger over the country to inquire far and wide for other names that there might be. When the mannikin came the next day, she began with Caspar, Melchior, Balthazar, and said all the names she knew, one after another, but to every one the little man said, "That is not my name." On the second day she had inquiries made in the neighborhood as to the names of the people there, and she repeated to the mannikin the most common and uncommon and the most curious. "Perhaps your name is Short Ribs, or Sheepshanks, or Laceleg," but he always answered, "That is not my name." On the third day the messenger came back again and said, "I have not been able to find a single new name, but as I came to a high hill at the end of the forest, where the fox and the hare bid each other good night, there I saw a little house, and before the house a fire was burning, and round about the fire quite a ridiculous little man was jumping. He hopped upon one leg and shouted, 'Today I bake, tomorrow brew, the next I'll have the young queen's child. Ha! Glad am I that no one knew that Rumpelstiltskin I am styled.'" You may think how glad the queen was when she heard the name. And when soon afterwards the little man came in and asked, "Now, Mistress Queen, what is my name?" At first she said, "Is your name Conrad?" "No." "Is your name Harry?" "No." "Perhaps your name is Rumpelstiltskin." "The devil told you! The devil told you!" cried the little man, and in his anger he plunged his right foot so deep into the earth that his whole leg went in, and when in rage he pulled at his left leg so hard with both hands that he tore himself in two. So as we can see from this, the young mistress gives gifts to this fairy so that he will help her. But in the end, when she promises a child, and it is usually in folklore that one promises a child and forgets, and then the child is given, that the human will try and find ways to get around that bargain. For a fairy, their name is very important. For example, a hearth spirit I was just reading about, if they give you your name, that is very secret and you are not to tell anybody. Today, in many magical traditions, there are magical names or craft names. These are names that are usually used in ritual and are not known outside of the circle. These are the names, at least to me, that you address yourselves with when you are addressing the spirits. However, today that is being kind of skewed, and you get people like Silver Ravenwolf and such, that these are the names that you use all the time. They become a nickname that you give yourself. Personally, I think such a name should be bestowed upon you by another, and that is the name that you use, and it is secret. For the example of this fairy, this name, Rumpelstiltskin, this is the fairy's true name, and when you have it, then you can control the fairy in that way. Not really control, but you have leverage over the fairy that you wouldn't normally have with any other thing. So that was the story of Rumpelstiltskin. Take from this what you will, but just know that if you give to a fairy, be careful what you wish for, and be careful what you give. Because sometimes you may be caught in a trap, because fairies are wily and tricky, and you need to be careful. Until next time, this is Tales by Twilight.